So
let's rock and roll.
Let's do it. All right, I'm sitting here with Cory Huffman. Got a few questions. This will be a fantastic interview.
Can't wait.
And at the end, we're going to have a speed round.
Which one am I looking at? This one?
You're looking at me.
Oh.
So it's fine either way. First of all, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, year 17 of teaching. It's not really who I am. It's just kind of what I do.
Right.
There's been a lot of great kids, a lot of good years. Been some, some kids, I won't mention names, but I'd like to not have met them.
Okay.
But I did.
Yep.
Which made me question this profession quite a bit. But after 17 years, if you're still here, there must be something intrinsic about it that you maybe not be able to put your finger on day after day, but it's there. So
right.
Other than that, I'm a dad, I'm a husband. My life has really kind of taken a turn to boring from what it once used to be, but
right.
I mean, I don't know. I like to think there's layers to me, but it also depends on the company I keep, because I know a lot about music, but I don't ever let that out, because if I'm around a non-music group, I'm not really going to bring it up. I know a lot about books, I read a lot about sports, but everybody's got their little niches that they have. It just depends on the company you keep.
Okay. So life's getting boring, but you're a dad now. So what's that change?
Yeah, let me clarify that. My own adventures have they're still there, but they're a lot smaller and a lot more kid friendly now.
Right.
So, but I guess I'm still, even though my daughter's 4, I don't know that I've got you think you have the dad thing down.
Right.
But it's also a day-by-day, step-by-step process that you learn as you go. And so I'd be remiss if I said I'm not in the midst of an adventure right now. Right now it's more of a challenge, and I'm actually scared to death because I don't want to misstep and I don't want to mess up. And my hope though is in the future I can look back on this fatherhood and realize just what an adventure it truly was, and appreciate that. Because then I'll look at it through a different lens versus the, oh my gosh, I'm scared to death. What do I do today? Type deal.
Still bartending on the weekends?
Quit that. Had to quit that. I bartended on the weekends for, like 4 years, and then that kind of that took a back seat when we were trying to have a baby, because that became the forefront of life, and we had a little difficult time there, so that became all-consuming, and so we both quit bartending, and we focused on what we needed to do to get to where we needed to be. So, I would love to do it again, but the problem is I can't mix drinks very well, and there's not many beer bars around anymore.
Yeah. So you got Forgiving Frost in your lap. You like to read. Tell us a little bit about that.
So I wrote this book in 2011, 2012. I think it came out in 2012. It actually a former student of mine, Olivia Hawkins, who I guess, she'd be graduated IU or a senior now. But anyway, I was telling her a story about my life in our little book group, and got onto the topic of the prologue of this book, and she's like, "Oh, you should take that and you should turn it into a story." And I never really thought about it. I've always written magazines and websites and stuff, but I thought, well, I'll kick it around. And so I played around with this idea for about a month, and next thing I know, I had 200 pages written of basically something that really happened to me when I was in kindergarten of all times, and then just kind of filled in the blanks on how I guess if that story actually would have come to fruition, how I would have seen it happening.
Okay.
And so, it sold some copies. I'm still here, so I'm obviously not on any book list, but I liked it. Everybody's got a story to tell.
It reminds me of John Green. Is there any inspiration? Because I know you said 2012, so that's kind of around when he was getting there.
First of all, that's a compliment I don't deserve, but I'll take it.
Yeah.
Yes, because I had never been one really to dabble into teenish fiction. I didn't, and suddenly I'm surrounded by these kids who are like hanging on to every word I say about books. So how you practice what you preach? How can I tell these kids that reading is oh so important? but then not be able to connect with them. You know, I can bring in the adult books that I'm reading, and they can ask me, what's that about, Mr. Huffman? You got to be very PG about it, because a lot of adult books are about adult things.
Right.
So I thought, well, maybe I'll just start dabbling into some teen fiction, because then we can have these book talks, and maybe they'll be inspired to, hey, I'd like to read that. And by reading that, even if it's a grade level up or two, suddenly the reading level is growing. So to your original point, I had picked a student had actually given me a copy of Looking for Alaska. And I'd been wanting to read it because I'd seen it at TJ Maxx countless times on clearance, and I didn't have a clue what it was about. Okay. So I read her copy, and it was the first book that I can remember to where halfway through the book, I was floored. Now, some people don't like it,
right,
but I was floored. I connected with these characters so much, and then halfway through the book, everything kind of falls apart, and I'd never read a book that I could recall where I was just like, oh my gosh, I need a minute.
Right.
Because in my head, these characters were real, and partly because I saw a little bit of myself in the main character, Miles. And so the journey that he was on, this adventure to find the great perhaps, that was me at one time. Because I'd moved to a new school in high school, and I wanted to find this greater something. What am I looking for?
Right.
And he found it, kind of. And then he lost it. And so it just, boom. And I thought, man, if a book like that's written for 15, 16, 17-year-old kids can take a man at the time, I think I was 29 when I first read it, and do that to him,
right?
Well, that's powerful. So then the next book, of course, was Paper Towns, and same kind of journey. It was just this connecting with his characters and then wanting something so bad only just to watch it slip through your fingers. And I thought, man, if I could write a story where that message or someone reads it and thinks, gosh, I felt it, I've been there, then I should do it, even if it didn't sell a single copy. But if someone read it and thought, man, I connected with that.
Yeah.
And plus, you put your words in print, whether it sells 1 million copies, sells a single copy or nothing,
right,
you're there. Like, you live there in that moment for forever. Right. So I was like, that's kind of cool. If I ever have kids, maybe one day they come across a thrift store and they're like, hey, this is my dad.
Right.
So it was, it was just an idea that really gained some legs, and I was like, let's just roll with it.
Yeah. So I know you read it to my class in 2016. Are you still reading it now?
Yes and no. And so this is not knocking the kids, but there's a certain maturity level. Well, this is actually a twofold problem. There's a certain maturity level that comes with the books I pick to read to the classes that I have. The COVID pandemic did no one any favors in that realm. A lot of kids. Now, some kids, yes, they read at home. Others didn't, and so there is this gap. I want to say in maturity. Not that they're not smart. There's just this maturity gap. Right. And so it really just depends on gauging the audience. Do I have kids based on the books that they're reading independently, or that I've recommended to them, or I've read out loud, that could handle it? Because it's not inappropriate, but there's levels to it in terms of understanding. So since your group, I think maybe 2 groups or 3 that I've read it to. Not this year, because like I said, I just don't. There's some kids in there they'd eat it up in a minute. I know they'd understand it, and there's some that I just feel like, if they take that wrong or they don't understand that, they can be taken out of context. So it just depends. Secondly, we have, this is my own personal vendetta to an extent. I'm not really blaming anyone. I would question it, but we have people that think certain books don't belong in schools and whatnot for whatever reason, and they're entitled to that reason and to that opinion. But I just feel like at a certain point, like, the decision on what I want to read should be made by me. And then your argument would be, but you're not of legal age to make, you're not 18 years old. Fine, then let's defer to my parents, defer to the parents, because like I said, growing up, I was not allowed to watch The Simpsons. I was not allowed to watch In Living Color, which was kind of like Saturday Night Live. Yeah. But I could read anything I wanted. And my parents' philosophy, not that they were right, but it worked for me. If you see it, you know it's inappropriate, we won't know, and you could emulate that outside of our, view. Right. And then people could get this impression of you. But if you're reading something and you don't understand it, you will ask. And trust me, I did. And there were some questions I asked that I really wish I had. Yeah. I did. But then at least now my parents thought was, now we know you know. So
Okay.
then we can help guide you at this
Right,
point.
right.
So if you don't understand it, we can explain it. And if we ever hear about you saying this or doing that, then it becomes our problem to deal with.
Right.
And so that was the way I was brought up. And like I said, some people may not do it, and that's okay. That's the way my parents did it. But the point being is they wanted me to read because it's the fundamental building block of your education.
Okay. Yeah. So, what other books are you reading? Are you still reading around the same stuff that we were, like Miss Peregrine's and Paper Towns?
Yeah, I did read Paper Towns to the group this year. And of course, there's a lot of stuff that, especially in today, teen fiction can be extremely ornery, but it also keeps up with, let's not kid ourselves, the way that teens interact anymore, even though I know people don't like to believe it happens, but they do. So with books like that, having read them so many times, there's a lot of stuff I edit out.
Right.
Scenes that don't contribute to the overall arc of the story that I'll just omit. So then it's not one of those like, oh, he read this, but there's this in it. That's not appropriate. And I would agree. That's why I don't read that.
No, you don't.
But Peregrine, yes, we read the first Peregrine. This is the first year I've not read the first three.
Really?
Because it's also the first group that just didn't capture the magic wasn't there for them. Like that sense of imagination, that sense of just a whole other world within a world with these, it just wasn't there. The light bulb, you could just see, like they had a lot of questions, but it's like, no, you shouldn't have. I'm glad I'll answer them, but no, you got to think about it. These aren't just words. This is a whole world that you've got to imagine in your head. I still do when a monster calls.
Oh yeah.
And I always get so frustrated when I read that one because that's like the sass book I've ever read, and like these kids are at the end, they're like, what happened? Like, no, you infer. You have to infer.
Right.
That's the whole journey. I've not done where things come back. I've kind of scaled it down to like the Secret Sheriff of 6th grade. I mean, that's stuff like that because a lot of the kids come in and there's no sense of wanting to read because for so long they've been, here we're going to sit in this group, we're going to read this nonfiction article on carburetors today, and then you answer these 3 questions. You're going to go back in the text and find the answers to this. And so when you tell them this is a really great book, you have to stop myself sometimes. They don't know what a great book is yet because they've not really been exposed to it. So my goal next year is to kind of reformulate the thought process on the read alouds and start basics. So I've always started with Peregrine.
Right.
I'm not going to start with it. I'm going to start a little more basic
and
try to hook them and then work into that. And that's the goal. So
I know for me, because I wasn't a reader because that's what reading was for me. It was reading an article that I had no clue about. Sure, I learned something, but it wasn't fun. And then you catch on to it.
And see that growing up, that's how Narnia was the first book for me that I thought, oh my gosh, there's a secret world inside of my closet. Or inside of my grandparents' basement. They had an old wardrobe that was locked, and I thought, oh my gosh, if I could just find the key right now. Yeah. So it's okay. It's the innocence of being a kid. I think I see too often kids that come in here, and it's like, I can't wait. I can't wait to be an adult, or I know already all this stuff. I think if you knew everything that the adults know, you wouldn't want to be one yet. Like keep the innocence. Be a kid. Let your imagination run wild. But too many kids would rather take a book, be like, nah, and get on TikTok and listen to somebody to tell them how this is or what, and take it as gospel. And I think, no. You're going to get there one day and you're going to be severely disappointed when you realize, oh, now I'm responsible not just to watch TikTok. I'm responsible for bills. I'm responsible for insurance. I'm responsible. Makes me sad, but it's a shame because if kids if they just open their minds, that all takes one book. All it takes is one. But I can give them every book in my classroom library, but they've got to be open and willing. And if they are, and there's kids that do, there's one this year that's read. I think the record for the year of a kid reading books in here, I think it's like 84. And I think she's topped the 100 already. Wow! Just anything I give her, and she's never once said I didn't like this. She'll tell me things she didn't like about it. But then it's been awesome to watch her this year. Yeah.
So, you enjoy music. You've said it doesn't come out that much, but you had, I don't think you have it anymore, National Road Magazine.
Yep.
So, what was that?
So National Road Magazine, of course, it's now defunct, but it originated in Greencastle, Indiana, and the owner slash editor-in-chief, Donovan Wheeler, is a teacher, but is just, I mean, he is the definition of cool. And I don't mean it in the kids' term, I mean it like in the jazz term,
Right.
just cool.
Yeah.
And started this online magazine. There was a couple print copies that eventually came out, but started this magazine that was just dedicated to arts, life, and culture along the National Road, which is Highway 40 there in Indiana. It stretches across the United States. And it was anywhere from Indianapolis to St. Louis to Cincinnati to Louisville. I mean, even Terre Haute. I'm talking even these small little Broward counties. You're talking small little towns where even if there was a hint of a band that could play, we had people there. And you were just trying to get these people in the world of, digital music,
Right.
trying to give these guys a platform
Yeah.
to just be heard. Because too often you turn on the radio now and I think, yikes, it's interesting.
Yeah.
There's a couple bangers out there that
Yeah.
I said, okay, I can nod my head to this. But like the feeling that some of those old songs or even original music give, that's kind of by the way. It's not by the wayside, but you have to really look for it.
Yeah.
Even in today's digital, you have to look for
Right.
it. And so that was just a way of getting out there, going to these shows, and not really seeing the main act. It wasn't about to go see. It wasn't going to see, Jim Eat World, even though I love
Right.
him. It was, well, who's opening for him? Well, this little band out of Vincennes called Surreal or whatever.
Right.
So it was giving Surreal that platform, that moment to be like, hey, guys, we deserve to be heard too. So if you're coming for Jim Eat World, why don't you come see us too?
Yeah.
And so it was a really great gig. I mean, any show, you're not getting Taylor Swift or stuff like that,
Right.
but any show, we were getting tickets, and we had to correspond with sometimes we got to meet the bands, other times we got to meet with the publicists and had to give them copies of our written stuff, and they'd
Right.
okay it or whatnot. But I met a lot of cool bands and a lot of cool people, and made a lot of good friends that way. And it was just a really neat experience. And I'm sad it ended, but 3 of the guys, myself included, kids were on the way, and the time commitment wasn't there, and Donovan just couldn't do it. So.
Right. Neat. Okay, I'm ready for this speed round. So
Deal.
we'll start out. I gotta make sure. Okay, that's what I thought. What's your favorite '80s hair band?
Oh man. So this is funny because we had to. I'll make this story short, but back when we were big in, my friend and I were huge into hair bands. We had we were jamming Great White. We were Cinderella up. We were Poison for Halloween one time, but he claimed Poison as his favorite hair band,
Okay.
and so I chose Cinderella.
Right.
But it's funny because as good as Cinderella was, secretly I was still like, I don't know, Poison's got all these jams and whatnot. But there's this one band called White Lion that there's the song "Sound of a Broken Heart." The beginning guitar riff, man. I don't know how you don't just pull your car up, just want to just air guitar it up, man. Like,
Right.
it's just great. I was like, I'm a White Lion fan, so I'd go with White Lion, I think.
Okay, White Lion. Now you were talking about driving. What's your favorite song to drive to? You're driving somewhere,
Oh, so
and you've got.
the first one's cliche, but it has meaning. There's a reason for it. I won't get into the reason, but one of them, I'd call it like a 1A, 1B. Fast Car by Tracy Chapman.
Okay.
I think it's just a phenomenal song. So,
Yeah.
and what's funny is some people, they love it
Right.
or they hate it. But that song comes on, I think, just put me on a highway somewhere.
Right.
Not an interstate, give me a highway. Because I don't know what can bother you in those 4 minutes that song is playing. And then another song that I love to drive to, because I can sing it, well, when I say sing it, I can sing it, doesn't mean I sing it well, is Faithfully by Journey. I absolutely love that song. I just love that song. So those are my probably 2 favorite, like, chill driving songs. I like chill music when I'm driving versus heavy and chaotic.
Right. I can stand with that. Last one. It's kind of a weird one.
Hey.
The best rock T-shirt you've ever seen. Rock band T-shirt.
Oh gosh. See, I like to think. This is going to sound very biased, but I have one that I'm so very proud of. It's Nelson.
Yep.
All right, and Nelson, like the twins, After the Rain. So, to me, if you've seen this T-shirt, it's the band on the front with this like gothic blue script that reads Nelson, and the band, the two brothers with their long blonde hair. It just, I don't know. I look at that. I think, how can someone wear that and not be stopped countless times for someone to inquire about it?
Right.
So I have to biasly say that, but I mean, I've seen some good ones. I had a friend that was in a little band in Lanesville called A Mustache Divided, and their T-shirt design, the kid's dad this is going to sound terrible, but this kid's dad looked just like Ron Jeremy.
Okay.
Now, please don't look him up if you're hearing this.
Yeah.
But they took his dad and they put Ron Jeremy's mustache on it, and that was their logo. And
right.
I looked at that, I thought, that's just so hilarious. Because
right.
if you know, you know, and if you don't, you think, I don't get it.
Right.
But
well, sweet. I think that does it for us. So, I'll take it.
Fair enough. I think back on as many band T-shirts as I've seen, though. Like, I was at an Air Supply concert one time, and this just popped in my head because it was believe it or not, it was a wild concert. But this younger woman had this T-shirt on, and it had, the two guys from Air Supply, Russell Hitchcock and Graham Russell, and they were like, looks like they were serenading one another.
Right.
But in the middle, and I don't think she was trying to be funny with it, but in the middle was Jesus, and he had his hands spread like he was cupping both, because both their hands were holding the mic.
Right.
And so he was like, his bottom of his palms were touching the bottom of their hands like he was lifting.
Yeah.
It was bizarre. I thought, I don't know if she was trying to be funny or not.
Right.
So I thought, well, that could be considered blasphemous, but at the same time, if you bought that and thought, this is great, I guess you'd go with that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, there you go.